What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Good Bro, Bad Bro, the #1 podcast in the world for dating advice, self-improvement, and improving your lifestyle, confidence, and social skills, particularly for young men. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Tanner Guzzi. This guy is a really interesting character. He's a professional men's fashion and style coach. So his job is literally to take high-level men and basically give them super personal and customized fashion, dress, confidence, and style advice and coaching. So think about like some of the highest level guys in the world and how they always dress a certain way. They always have like a specific image they're conveying, and there's a lot of power of appearance. And this guy is like the world-class leading expert on that. So he's going to break down all of the different dynamics when it comes to dressing, all the common mistakes most men make, and he's going to teach us how to be more masculine and more attractive when you present yourself and dress, especially to the opposite sex of women, but also how to get respect from other men and how people in society and people around you in your social groups will actually view you and form opinions of you and respect you and like you based purely on how you dress, how you present yourself through style and fashion. So it's going to be a very interesting episode, guys. But before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Hit the like button, go over to Apple, leave us a 5-star review, drop a comment for the algorithm to let us know what you like, and I hope you guys enjoy this.
And I'm feeling good. I like a dude who fucks his life up and then gets it back together.
You get Guzzy right? Most guys miss that. Did you say Guzzy or Goozy?
Buddy, I said Goozy. I fucked up.
Or we can make up for it on here on the back end.
All right, Mr. Guzzy, welcome to the show, brother.
Jack, stoked to be here, dude.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming in. Dude, real quick, give us a quick background on who you are, what you do.
Cool. Okay, so Tanner Guzzy. I am based in Provo, Utah, of all places. I'm a father of 5. I've got 4 daughters and a son, all under the age of 10. So as you can imagine, my household is pretty chaotic. And I have the weirdest job in the world. I'm a men's style coach. I teach guys why and how they should care about their appearance. And as you can imagine, I get a lot of resistance to that on the internet. And then a lot of clients who, once they come on board, they're really, really stoked about what the results are. So it's really fun to get to kind of like break paradigms and help men understand all of the identity implications and the communication implications of clothing and why they should care about how they look.
Beautiful, dude. There's actually something really good to jump into right there. Resistance on the internet, man. That's something I've found too. Like, it's always the biggest, loudest idiots that have no receipts, that have never done anything in their life, and they're always jumping in, criticizing. I mean, what's that like from your perspective?
Yeah, it's always funny where I get guys who, and whether it's my take on clothing or on family or masculine self-improvement or religion or anything else, it's always the guys who you can tell that they just resent anybody who's sincerely putting in any efforts to better themselves because they can't quite muster up the guts to do that. There have been plenty of times where I've gotten comments like that, and all I respond is, how would you like me to respond to this? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, holy crap, I didn't think anybody's actually going to answer this. Like, sorry, dude, I was just like messing with you. I thought you were more of a personality than a person. And so it's so funny how if you just give even the slightest bit of pushback that isn't completely dickish on your part, they're just like, oh, okay, I know I screwed up. I know I'm the one who's the idiot in this situation.
Dude, I think like I've been getting hate comments for fucking years of like different podcasts, different content, and like I've never even thought about that as like a response. Like, how do I respond to this? That's actually genius. I'm gonna have to start using that.
It just breaks their brains a little bit because you're not coming out being a complete dick about it, and at the same time you're not just lying down and taking it. And so it puts the ball back in their court, and it's a really fun way to kind of instigate it further.
Yeah, what I find, man, is I think that like TikTok just has really low IQ people.
I don't even engage on TikTok. I create content. I don't even like. I try to respond to all my comments on Instagram. I try to engage with guys on Twitter. I'm not touching TikTok comments, not even close.
TikTok is pretty much the most low attention app there is, right? Because it's like several seconds. One of the main characteristics of dumb people is having a low attention span, right? So like TikTok is just like a cesspool of people with low attention spans, and also people that like, you know, they have no profile picture and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to leave some hate.
I'm going to feel so good about myself because otherwise, if this guy's legit, then I'm going to feel like the moron I am. So let's just get that dopamine hit.
Dude, yeah, there it is. There it is. Like, ooh, let me just, you know, leave some hate. With pushback that you've received, I know like your brand is masculine style, but, you know, I feel for you because words like masculine are just getting tossed around now. And there's a lot of pushback. Like the term alpha male has been destroyed. Now it's a punchline. masculine though, people go, oh, toxic masculinity, right? So like, how do you feel about like masculinity in general nowadays and the pushback it's receiving?
I think we're seeing kind of a couple different directions in this, where there's definitely this whole stupid idea of toxic masculinity, which is hilarious because it's always like the guys who grow up without dads that don't have mentorship that are the ones who end up the most toxically masculine. It's like, think that one through. But then you get this kind of like cartoon character, manosphere, pickup artist, alpha Chad Gigabro type thing. And some of that's in good fun, but a lot of it really just got so self-referentially ridiculous that, I mean, I can't, in fact, I can. When I started Masculine Style as a blog 10 years ago, and I unironically use terms like alpha and beta because that's what we were doing back then. And now you look back on those original posts and you just kind of face palm and go, I can't believe I used to think about things like that. But I think masculinity is a wonderful thing. And that is a term that we should hold on to because words mean something. And one of the things that we deal with postmodernism is we too readily cede the definition of terms to the postmodernists and let them redefine what they mean. And so we're always scrambling to come up with new definitions, whether that's trauma or tolerance or diversity or empathy or something else. And we just let them reshape those terms in their image. And I think masculinity is definitely one of those that we should kind of stand our ground and say, no, this means something and it means what we say it means, and we're going to stick to it.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think one of the main problems is that like a lot of people are very afraid to have an opinion on stuff. So, here's my mic. For example, a lot of people obviously believe in different things when it comes to science and sexuality and gender and whatnot. But it's getting to a point where people would say like, something isn't masculine or something isn't feminine. You can't be like, masculine is not a male trait, feminine is not a female trait. And, like we're going to live in this wishy-washy world where like we can't ever use any words or terms or describe anything at all, even though it's scientifically backed, because everybody's so afraid to, offend somebody on the internet. So like, how do you navigate with, stuff like that?
Yeah, I just stopped worrying about it. I've learned, and this kind of goes back to your original post about internet hate, is, the feelings of validation you get when the right people agree with you and you're like, I'm stoked that this guy's on board with me or that she gets this or something else. I've learned that when the right people hate what I'm saying and I get hate from the right people, it's just as validating. And I've kind of embraced the idea of Churchill, where it's like, oh, good, you've got enemies. That means you stood for something at some point in your life. And so this is one of those where you just have to embrace the fact that people are going to hate you. They're going to resent you. They're going to tell you you're evil because you stick to definitions on things. You stick to the idea that there are objectives in differences between men and women or right and wrong or anything else. And you just say, okay, fine, hate me. I don't care.
Buddy, beautiful transition. I think that's one of the laws of power, right? You have to be polarizing and interaction with boldness. I imagine you're pretty familiar with Robert Greene. Buddy, fucking love ancient leaders. Actually, that's why I'm so interested by Cusco, right? Because, I'm staying a couple kilometers away from where people used to be executed in the town square, And the leaders, the kings, they probably, all they had to separate themselves based on like their status and power was probably how they dressed, right? There's no Instagram followers or any of that shit. We'll get to that. But, Robert Greene, he has a book called Laws of Human Nature. Are you familiar with that? Okay, so the idea is that, there's all these things about the way people, treat each other, the way that, like, we can tell what somebody's thinking based on how they're acting, stuff like that. What would you say, like, some laws of human nature would be when it comes to, like, dressing and presenting yourself in front of others?
I think the best way that I can express it is that clothing is as powerful of a communicator as the written language is. And you can be just as articulate with your clothing as you are with your ability to read and write. Think about how easy it is to recognize a police officer from a regular civilian, or think about how easy it is to recognize a player on your favorite sports team versus the rival team, or how easy it used to be to recognize the difference between men and women just based on clothing. And clothing is one of these ways where we develop this, I call it aesthetic literacy. It's the ability to communicate very minute things of status or accomplishment. I mean, think about military uniforms and how well they can signal things like rank or certain acts of heroism or bravery or selflessness or other things that are all based on the medals that they wear and where they're placed and how it's all tied in. And so clothing is a fundamental method of communication that is just as important as the things that we say or the things that we write and read.
All right, guys, so like we're discussing in this video, there's a lot of people out there that are good looking, but they don't take care of their skin. Maybe it's too much time for them, they don't know what product to choose, or they just aren't following a proper routine. This is an issue that a lot of guys and girls face, and that is why I am excited to partner with T. Shanley for this video. T. Shanley is a skincare company that helps simplify having an effective, manageable skincare routine. They have a bunch of different products, but I recommend you start with the basic level 1 system. Super beginner friendly and gets everything you need to get done in a skincare routine. It comes with your wash, morning moisturizer, your nighttime moisturizer. What I also like too about the morning moisturizer is that it has SPF 20 in it, so it actually helps with sunlight as well. And because T. Shanley is sponsoring today's video, they're giving you guys a really good deal, 30% off on your first order, okay? All you have to do is just click the first link in the description and you'll get 30% off your first box and a free gift too. Anyways, back to the video. My buddy told me that like hundreds of years ago, they didn't have purple in clothing. Like they couldn't get purple.
They couldn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell me about that? Is that true?
From what I understand, that was the case. Is it was an incredibly difficult and or expensive color to make. And so purple became the color of royalty because you had to have this amount of resources in order to be able to wear that color. It was not something that the average layman would be able to get his hands on. And so clothing or color, especially color and clothing, used to have these really strong combination or correlations. There's an interesting book. It's a little quick read. What's it? I think I've got it here. The Devil's Cloth. And it's about how stripes used to be a representation of evil. And you could not wear anything with stripes unless you were actually considered to be demonic. And it became this like subculture undermining. And now we don't think about that at all. But stripes were just as fascinating as things like the color purple or any of these other things that different cultures have used across the world to be able to express very particular.
So the other ones are probably like gold, maroon, orange. I feel like orange would have been pretty hard to make, man.
Yeah, I would imagine so, right? Yeah. And here's the irony. I was kind of lamenting this the other day. Because now your high class colors are like black, white, blue, brown, and gray, the neutrals, the earth tones, the things that are very kind of like beige and standard. And you invert that, you go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and it would have been the opposite. That was what the lower classes, that's what the peasant class or the farming class or anybody else would have been wearing. And then your aristocrats, your priest class, your royalty would have been wearing the garish colors. And now it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, so interesting. So like the bold colors, like the red, the royal blue, the bright yellow, would those now be like too cocky, I suppose? Is that why people think people are too afraid to wear them?
They're cheap. I mean, you look at like, okay, I think about this as a father where like the nice toys that you buy for your kids are the ones that are wooden and are of neutral palettes. And the cheap ones are the bright garish colors that are plastic that you pick up at Walmart. And color has become, because there's no longer exclusivity in the access to color became overused and oversaturated. I would imagine that likely happened in the 20th century, like mid 20th century, when you get neon or all these other things that really kind of like ramp it up. And then now we just associate it with garishness or white trash or low class or anything else.
I think that's what happened to yellow too, because there's a study done that I believe the text in headlines, prices, billboards, subtitles, the most paid attention to color is yellow. So that's why prices, headlines, logos, they're always yellow.
So often in yellow. Yeah, and that makes sense because it's going to be the most attention getting. But we now live in a culture where I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. We're thinking out loud as we have this conversation. So you guys, if you please call me on this. But my thought process on that is that in order to have some level of status, there needs to be a comfort with attention. Like, I'm not desperate for it. This isn't my first time experiencing it. It's kind of like the people that make it a point to take a photo and post it on Instagram of them flying first class, that they never fly first class. Whereas the guys that don't make a big deal out of it are the ones that, fly first class all the time anyway. And I think yellow is kind of one of those things, or color is one of those things where it's this desperation to be acknowledged, as opposed to I've already done hundreds of these reps and I don't really care if you pay attention to it or not.
True. Right. Getting back to what you're talking about, how purple was a royal color and to the laws of human nature. I believe that certain colors are much more popular than others. And what that leads back to is the reason people prefer and would identify a certain color as their favorite would be some kind of, primitive sense where that color makes more people feel good. The one example I know would be blue. And the reason blue is the most common color when people identify their favorite color is because it's the color of the sky. And sky, daylight, on a biological level is associated with safety because you can see everything. The sun is out, vitamin D absorption. And then darkness, black, is always associated with fear, evil, death, because you can't see anything. So I know that for blue, I know that for black. What about the other colors? Do you know anything about what they represent on a primitive level?
No, that's a great question. And I've even heard different theories about things that are like, my favorite color is orange, which I know is not very common for most people to have orange be a favorite color. And maybe that's because it's the uniqueness or the attention getting or something else. I would love to know like what the biological correlations and connotations are for all those colors, but you're already
well, yeah, like orange, you never see orange in the wild. You see it
in oranges.
That's about it. Like maybe some flowers, pollination.
Right, but you're not really seeing it in clothing. You're not really seeing it in a lot of other contexts.
Yeah, green, that's a big nature one. Every environmental company has like a green.
That's health, that's life, that's, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Red, that's one of the more interesting ones because maroon is blood, obviously. But red, that's like, the bull runs at it. I mean, why does the bull run at the red? Do you know that?
I don't. From I've heard rumors that it correlates with agitation and anger, where there's even like, and this is one of the things that's fascinating to me because blue is supposed to be a calming color, but it's interesting that when you think about blue light versus red light, that when you're getting blue light in, that's when your body's awake and alert, whereas getting red light from sunset or firelight is when it's actually like your circadian rhythm starts to slow down. And so I don't know. This is what's so fascinating about all of this is it seems like as we
that's true,
start to contradict each other and other things start to back each other up. And the whole idea of like color theory as it relates to biology would be a very fascinating subject to really go down the rabbit hole on.
Yeah, maybe it was you that posted it, but I saw somewhere that the reason that red light therapy makes us fall asleep is because our ancestors would fall asleep to campfires. Like that's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And then why do we see red as an agitating color when it's a calming, when the red light is calming? I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah.
I've seen some stats online too that like, they would study the responses of thousands of women, and they'd have guys wear different color shirts, and then women would find men more attractive by like 1 or 2 points when they wore red. Have you seen any studies or stuff like with colors?
I've seen stuff like that, and I think it's more related to there's a certain level of confidence or showiness that's associated with that. Because I would imagine in some alternate universe, there's a world where men wear red jeans and red suits, and red is as ubiquitous and common as navy is right now. And so it doesn't stand out. There's not like the power connotation to it of I'm comfortable being the center of attention. And I think that has more to do with it than anything else, because in a world where black, white, blue, brown, and gray are so common, red stands out and it kind of dares to assert yourself into somebody else's visual world. And that would be associated with confidence, with bravado, with status. And so it makes sense that women would find that as attractive.
Why, in professional terms, does black make everybody look so much better?
I think it kind of correlates with what you're saying as far as that night, that darkness. There's an edginess and a seriousness to it. But I also wonder if it doesn't have anything to do. Here's the thing that's so interesting about clothing is you have the biological, the color theory, the objectifiable and measurable things. And this can be in color. This can be related to like Leonardo da Vinci and the golden ratio and how our proportions be. Like you have all this stuff that happens over here. And at the same time, you have all of these contextual cues and this meaning that's infused in them and the way that we interpret certain things. Because I mean, you go back to Britain and the British aristocracy in the 19th, early 20th century, and it was the whole idea of like you wear black in the city and you wear brown when you're out in the countryside. And so black was associated with one, you could afford to wear black and you could afford to have a separate style for when you're in the city versus when you're in the country. And you're more likely than not about serious business when you're in the city versus when you're wearing brown and you're in the countryside, you're engaging in leisure and enjoying your time out there. And so how much of it is actual biological associations with color? how much of it is cultural interpretations of color? Do they overlap? Do they contradict each other? This is where it always gets super fascinating.
I wonder which color is most associated with like trust, and which color is most associated with, not the opposite of trust, like distrust.
Yeah, that distrust. And is that a universal thing or is that a cultural thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Something like, take the suit, for example. 80 years ago, the suit was associated with trust, and it was associated with credibility. It was associated with authority, security, safety. Now, most people in the West have an antipathy for suits. They see it as flaky or disingenuous or vain or like corrupt politicians, or
like a car salesman or something like that.
Exactly. So you take the same symbol, but because of a culture's relationship with it, the emotional reaction to that symbol changes. Again, take like the swastika, a really good example of that. Prior to what Germany did with it, there was no negative connotation to it. Now there's no positive connotation to it whatsoever, and there's no escaping that. And so you always have the cultural reflections of what those symbols are and then what that can mean.
Man, I got 2 points to go from that real quick though. One was the suit and how the suit's kind of been ruined society. What would be the newer version of the suit, right? Like the newer, more trustworthy version.
This is what sucks, is that we've gone from a culture that one was largely homogenous. And so there was kind of like one all recognized symbol. Didn't matter if you were black or white, blue collar or white collar, urban or rural. As long as you were in the West, the suit was kind of seen as these things that it represented. Now we're so tribally balkanized that there are no universal symbols, that some people will see this as being high status or credible or trustworthy, and other people will see it as anti that. And then at the same time, one of the things that we are largely consistent on is that we've moved from being a culture that values dignity to a victim-based culture. And so we see the guys that are the sloppiest, or that are, this is why guys like Mark Zuckerberg or Adam Sandler are celebrated for their atrocious styles, because we see it as authentic, or they're not putting on a front, or they're being their true selves. And the aesthetics or the idea of dignity or self-respect or authority or mastery is completely rejected as being a good thing that should be embraced in our clothing. Instead, what we value is authenticity, and really just means being lazy in the way that we talk about authenticity. And so I don't think that there is anything that has replaced the suit as this universal symbol of dignity like it used to be.
Interesting. What was the last like style that just out of nowhere worked, where you're just like, this is like some brand new fresh shit? Because, so much has been done, so much has been like, the wheel can only be reinvented so many times. But then you had like rappers come out with, they have like rainbow colored hair, and they have like super bright colors. And then in the 90s they had like guys like Kurt Cobain with ripped jeans and cardigans and long bleached hair. Like what are some of like the last examples of something completely original and fresh?
Man, completely original, and what also will stand the test of time, because that's the hard thing about, you look at the 20th century and you go back to the 80s and you look at like mustaches and mullets and neon, and that was super cool back then. But you get 10 years out from it and it sucks and it's awful. Or you go to the 90s and you get like the goatees and the really baggy stuff and the giant chains and the chain wallets, or you go to the grunge era, or you go that, and that was really cool then, but it doesn't stand the test of time. And same thing with, I don't know what the last thing would have been, or what the last decade was, in which you could see something that looked great then, and even though it would look outdated now, you still look at it and go, that looks incredible today. I can think of individual pieces like Ray-Ban Wayfarers sunglasses that are cool in every decade, or you look at like Converse Chuck Taylors. Those have worked in every decade. So I can think of individual pieces, but I can't think of anything that's cohesive as a style that's happened in a lot, like post World War II, introducing like that classic Americana military heritage, like t-shirts and jeans and stuff like that. I can't think of anything since then that I would say is really going to pass that test anymore.
Something we were talking about earlier, historical leaders, but also how like there's association with military and evil with like stripes and whatnot. Obviously controversial. The guy was absolutely awful, but like I'm fascinated by like, the whole Nazi Germany thing, like the imagery, in an evil, despicable way, like the marketing, the huge banners.
They were so good at it. That's why they were so effective. And they took a good principle and they used it for such malicious purposes. But like you look at my friend Antonio Centeno, who runs a YouTube channel called Real Men Real Style. He did a really interesting video, I think, called Terror Through Style, breaking down the creation of the SS uniforms and all of this stuff. And what really sucks is that the design principles are so sound, and those guys still look so powerful and credible today. And sadly, I think that's one of the reasons why that's been subverted, is because we associate those good aesthetics, sadly, but rightfully so, with such an atrocious regime.
Well, yeah, when you look at the pictures of just like these perfectly constructed massive banners, everybody is standing in perfect order, and like it looks like you almost get like a sick gut feeling, like, man, like that is like it almost feels like it's still real, you know?
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's sad that that's where, and it makes sense that because fascism in and of itself takes good principles and takes them to extremes. And so it would take these principles of unity and turns it into conformity, or it takes these principles of aesthetics and turns them into rigidity. And so we see these taken to extremes, and they get perverted beyond the ideals where they would have been good, and they get twisted into that kind of gut wrenching thing where you just go, this feels off and this doesn't sit right.
So besides like the evil guys, obviously, who are some examples of like, you know, famous ancient leaders that had like a crazy distinctive look? Like as soon as you see it, you already know who it is.
My favorite is George Washington.
Oh, with the white hair?
And it wasn't even necessarily the powdered wig. You go back and you read on his stuff. One of the best books I've ever read is by Ron Chernow. It's called A Life, and it's a Washington biography. And he understood the communicative power of aesthetics, not only in clothing, but even the way that his carriages were designed, or the way that Martha's Vineyard was designed in the home, and the livery of his servants and his slaves. And you can read letters about him desperate for the colonial soldiers to get uniforms because of what it would do as far as unifying them and helping them feel like they weren't this ragtag band of farmers and rebels trying to fight the greatest army of the greatest empire in the world, but instead would make them feel like they were on equal footing because they were soldiers in regalia and they were unified, and there were ranks and all of this. And so I love Washington's just pure understanding of the communicative power of aesthetics. He's so fascinating.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are some good examples of like ancient leaders using appearance to their advantage? And I don't necessarily mean like politically, but like, you know, maybe some tactical shit, like the Trojan horse, where they sent it through the gates and then they snuck out. What are some examples of like maybe deception or, you know, just famous examples where people fooled others with their appearance?
Well, okay, so here's a cool one related to that as far as fooling others. The Spartans would wear red cloaks because of the psychological effect it would have. Because if you're already fighting an enemy in a sea of red, then you don't really distinguish between cloaks and blood. And so it has this kind of impact of these guys looking like they're still just as red as they were. You're not seeing any progress being made.
Oh, shit.
It's, my guys are still impervious. I'm not seeing blood. I'm not seeing blood-stained cloaks or coats. Like everything is as red as it already was before. So it starts to impact things that way. Another really interesting example, I referenced this one in the book, is you look at the Mayans, and they had these two elite warrior classes. And here's like the cool secret about masculinity and style, is that it was always the warrior class that those men cared the most about their appearance. It wasn't the priests, it wasn't the bureaucrats, it wasn't royalty, it wasn't the farmers, it was the warriors that were the most like hyper vigilant about their clothing. Anyway, going back to the Mayans, they had these two warrior classes that were the eagle and the jaguars. And they would wear costumes that incorporated like jaguar skins or eagle feathers. They would dress up like this. One, is a way to distinguish themselves from each other because there was this kind of like rivalry between them. But two, because they actually believed that when you wore this clothing, it would imbue upon you the power of the jaguar or the power of the eagles. And so they get this placebo effect of becoming greater warriors in battle because they believe that their clothing that they're putting on gives them more power. So you study any culture, and there's always this connection of clothing and how it mattered to the men, and especially the warriors. It's so fascinating.
Damn, that's a lot cooler than the example I know about Abraham Lincoln being taken more seriously with the beard.
Right? There you go. Yeah, but I mean that's just that. What's cool is like today you can't say, hey, I want to be cooler and I want more confidence, so I'm going to dress up like a jaguar. That's totally unapplicable to your average guy today. But hey, I want to look more masculine and feel more masculine, so I'm going to grow a beard. That one you can do, especially if you can grow a decent beard.
Gotcha. So what are some of the main, most attractive types of clothing to the opposite sex? Because I imagine that's one of the major, if not the major, motivation for a lot of men to improve their fashion.
So the most attractive clothing to the opposite sex is whatever is going to signal high status in a tribe that woman is a part of. This is why women will say a suit is to women what lingerie is to a man. It's not because there's any sort of like visual connotation, but it's because it signals status in a way that women who still see the suit as high status will see that as attractive. You can get into different tribes where chicks really love cauliflower ears because it shows that the guy's tough and that he is somebody who's put in his paces in the MMA octagon, or that he's a fighter or a wrestler or something else that way. You can get gamer girls who get really excited about these dorks that wear their like super rare Legend of Zelda t-shirts. So it's really anything that's going to be high status for the tribe that those women belong to. That's what they're going to find attractive.
If you want to learn the proper way to talk to women and to transform your dating life, be sure to check out the Denmo Social course. Denmo Social is our best-selling video course that teaches you how to get real confidence, real results, and meet your next girlfriend. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description and completely transform your dating life. For those of you that need direct help with your specific dating issue, I also offer one-on-one coaching and consulting. The topics that I specialize in and can help you with include approach anxiety, communication, confidence, getting a girlfriend, maintaining a relationship once you have one. That's a big thing where a lot of guys mess up. They let themselves go once they do get into a relationship, as well as getting over a breakup, building a social circle, and much, much more. I still have about 50% availability for this month, so be sure to click the link in the bio below and save your spot. Book a call now. Yeah, I see a new trend actually. I got into this for a little bit because I'm a big classic rock guy. I love old rock bands, and you've probably been aware of this. There's a massive movement right now in vintage streetwear. So guys are digging through what's that place where you get like Salvation Army, Goodwill. So they're hunting for like old school, like faded, but like quality, like t-shirts and sweaters used to be made way better like 20, 30 years ago. So they actually, I have a bunch of them. I have like all these tie-dye shirts with like wolves and penguins, like the nature ones. But I've noticed a lot of women are into that too. And they like wearing men's clothing. They like the oversized Metallica shirts, even though they've never even listened to the band. But but the logos of these bands are so iconic and cool that's like the new trend I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when it comes to women a lot with their own clothing, there's a whole different the motivation in clothing between men and women and why we dress the way we do versus why they dress the way that they do. I think that's one of the problems. And this is why I don't recommend guys go to women for clothing advice, because it's kind of like being a sumo wrestler and asking a marathon runner for fitness and diet advice. It's like you're trying to accomplish entirely different.
Well, ancient proverb, man. It's the same thing on TikTok. Like guys like me get a lot of flack for giving dating advice, but it's like, why would you ask the fish? Ask the fisherman.
Ask the fisherman. Absolutely.
It's the same thing, man.
Here's a curveball. What do you think is the worst fashion trend right now? Like, what is like this thing that guys, they just need to stop. They just got to stop wearing it, bro.
The worst thing is not a particular piece of clothing, but it's the mindset that most guys have, which is I'm dressing in a way. Okay, most guys will say, I don't care as long as I'm comfortable. Mm-hmm. And they don't mean physically comfortable. They think they mean physically comfortable, but what they really mean is I want the comfort of not having anybody have any expectations of me. Mm. And so they will dress in a way that they avoid attention, that they look like they can't be relied on, that they look like they can't be expected to take charge of anything, that they look like they just want to disappear. And sadly, most guys, or if they look like they put any sort of effort into it, it's this kind of ironic, oh, hey, isn't everything kind of a big joke? You can't reject me because I've already made a big joke out of everything else myself. But both of them are rejecting the idea of any sort of sincerity and dignity in what their style is. And I think you guys need to stop that right away.
That's some deep psychological shit.
Right? Yeah.
You know what? I got a great example of that, man. I have this theory that everybody that still wears masks is just trying to be hidden.
Totally. It has become this thing of they want to hide from the world. They're afraid of being seen by the world. I would totally agree with that.
So much of the face and visual communication is like the bottom half. And we learned that through, everything we're doing. So now there's not enough information from eyes. And when animals are scared, when you look at them, what they do? They look down instinctively, or they put their eyes down, and what that does to them is in their mind, it releases, cortisol or stress or whatever. It makes them feel better because when they look down, if they can't see the person that's looking at them, it feels like they're hidden. Right. So I feel like now, don't spread illness, whatever. But I think what it mostly is people want to be hidden. They don't feel confident about how they look. They don't want people to approach or talk to them. So they're like, let me just do this.
Yep. It's a visual wall that protects them and keeps any potential threat out. I would totally agree with that.
So here's a random curveball question too, because we're ripping through this. Why do you think that guys don't wear makeup? Actually, first,
how deep do you want to go down this?
Let's start with the history of makeup, because I find it very interesting. There's this big movement right now where, women are super encouraged to wear makeup and do all this, but at the same time, the idea is that, well, you're beautiful the way you are. So it's like this massively contradicting thing. And then another thing,
you're supposed to feel that dissonance and feel like you're getting pulled in both directions.
Right. And then, women can never admit that they wear makeup to attract men. It's always for themselves, right?
For myself, right.
Yeah. But men, we could admit, we dress good for ourselves to look good to people, right? That's the whole, there goes my microphone again. But anyways, I looked into it, and it turns out that like makeup to an extent nowadays was made by, rich old men and marketed in order to get women to buy makeup products and be convinced that they need to wear makeup or else they're not as valuable to society. So now all women are wearing makeup because they're essentially forced to because of the marketing carried out by men. So in many ways, women find wearing makeup empowering, but in reality, makeup is actually like the greatest example of the patriarchy.
Right? Isn't that hilarious? That's almost always the case. Yeah.
Yeah. What's up with it? So what's the history of makeup and then the history of it towards like women wearing it?
So I'm not sure what the entire history is when it's related to our current approach on cosmetics. I will tell you that men in different cultures have worn makeup, and we just gave it a different term. It's war paint.
Warrior shit, right?
Yeah. It's war paint, where it is, whether it's the Scots with their blue, or it's war paint that was worn by Native Americans, and I mean, you go into some cultures that are still considered like quote unquote primitive cultures, where you get into the Aborigines, or you get into these like remote tribes in parts of South America. They don't even wear clothing because geographically, like, and from a climate perspective, they don't need it, but they wear body paint. They wear makeup because of the symbolism and everything that's associated with it. You can even look at like the most powerful men in the world today wear makeup. Anytime you see somebody on camera, on TV, they're wearing makeup. But I think one of the big differences is that women wear makeup as a way to accentuate, if not exaggerate, the features that men find to be either sexually attractive or comfortably attractive. Sure, let's say comfortably. I'll make that a word. Whereas men, the way that they do it is either to just completely minimize any sort of flaws and just get them back to neutral, or again, you go to war paint and it's a way to exaggerate masculine features. I would also make the argument that most guys, when it comes to tattoos, that is modern makeup.
Okay. There's an interesting take on this, right? You have like, there's equal opportunity and there's equal outcome. There's liberals and then there's conservatives. And one of the principles that carries over with conservatives is like personal responsibility, accountability, individuality, and like, everything is my fault kind of thing. And would you think that a lot of the qualities that make a man masculine tend to be towards focusing on things that are much more sustainable and consistent? So for example, as opposed to prioritizing putting on makeup, actually like, physically improving your body, your muscle mass, and, basically men and women focus on different things to attract the opposite sex. Whereas I feel like, women are able to hide a lot of stuff with their makeup and men will still be attracted to them. But like if a guy's out of shape or whatever, if he puts on makeup, women are like, no. That doesn't cut it, bro. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think part of it is that the things that women find attractive in men have nothing to do with makeup, because it's not that physical attraction. Again, it's going to be a status or an accomplishment or an income or an influence or something else. That's what makes men attractive to women. And makeup can't do that. So the male equivalent of makeup is
money.
money or stuff or travel or all of these other things that are signals of high status. And so in a lot of ways, clothing becomes that for men, where it's watches and it used to be suits and stuff like that. And now it's other things. But yeah, anything that becomes a status signal is the male equivalent of makeup for women, especially when you can't afford it, but you're buying it and you're flashing it anyway.
Yeah, that's a great way to actually define, men and women, because there's a great saying that, women are beauty objects, men are success objects, right? And makeup's a great example of that, because if men were beauty objects, we would wear makeup. They would wear makeup. And if women were success objects, then they would be crushing it in businesses, perfecting their body, approaching men in public, and they wouldn't be wearing makeup. They would be, like focusing on things that are more sustainable, right? So yeah, makeup in many ways
is really useful to society. Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so I got another question for you. This is more, I guess, niche to like once you've actually gotten into your style and whatnot. So I went on your website and you have a bunch of different outfits you wear that communicate masculinity differently. But, what are the pros and cons of having like one definitive style versus being multidimensional? So, for example, like a Conor McGregor. Whenever you think of Conor McGregor when he's not fighting, he's in a perfect suit, sunglasses indoors. Guns N' Roses, lead guitarist Slash. He has his top hat, leather jacket. Cool story about him too, about Slash. He apparently, whenever he wants to walk around in public, he just takes his hat off and nobody recognizes him. So yeah, what are the pros and cons of both sides?
Ooh, okay, this is a fun question. All right. What I've found is that the more a man is limited in his clothing, the more tightly he associates his identity with that particular style of clothing. I was talking to a friend about this just the other week. He does strength training documentaries. He's an incredibly strong man. And he was telling me that he was invited to a friend's wedding in a couple weeks and he doesn't want to go because he can't wear gym shorts and a t-shirt. And he's pissed about it. And it's like, well, how frustrating must that be that you're missing out on so many things that are great things in life because you can't bring yourself to wear different clothing than what you wear. And we'll make the argument that it's because it's physically uncomfortable for guys who are really well built to be able to, but you can find clothes that like, that's not an issue anymore. You can find brands, you can get stuff custom made, especially someone like him who's financially well off, like it's possible, but it's the psychological association of, no, I am a guy who wears gym shorts and logo t-shirts. And if I veer outside of that, then I don't feel like I'm myself. And so there's this problem where the more limited you are in your wardrobe, the more tightly your identity is defined by that wardrobe. And you start to see yourself as a one-dimensional character.
Yeah. Somewhere I see that actually is amongst women and wearing makeup. And I mean that in like many women won't leave the house or do anything. They won't take a photo of themselves. They won't be on video. They won't go out unless they have makeup, unless they have the perfect look. And it's like, at what point in your life are you going to be, I guess, mentally strong enough, physically strong enough, confident enough in yourself that you can leave the house, you can take photos of yourself, go and visit friends, go on a date with a guy without needing to wear makeup?
Yeah. The other thing that I'd say that you miss out on by being too limited in what your wardrobe is clothing has this unique ability to make you more present in whatever it is that you're participating in. And this is why people used to get dressed up to travel, or you get dressed up to go on a date, or you get dressed up to go to the opera, or you dress down to go to the gym, or you dress down when you're going to take it easy on a Sunday. And as we've moved more and more to not only this kind of like cultural, what mercurial, nothing is ever really dressed up or dressed down. And we saw this even more with COVID. And as people were working remotely, people found that they were caught in this kind of like psychological Groundhog's Day, where everything is the same, everything is vanilla, everything is mediocre. And if you don't learn that, hey, I'm only going to wear my gym clothes when I'm in the gym because it puts me mentally in gym mode. And I'm going to wear work clothes when I'm at work. And I'm going to wear date clothes when I'm on a date. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to listen to my gym music when I'm in the gym, or I'm going to eat this kind of food when I'm on a date, or like we have so many of these different things that we can do to ourselves, and clothing is one of them that can either make things more special and make us more present in those moments, or it can blend everything together and make it so nothing is special, nothing is unique, everything is just this sea of blah.
Actually, I never thought about it like
where
that.
We've gone. Yeah.
A good analogy for that too. Jordan Peterson said that you should never work or eat in your bedroom.
Yes, exactly. Right. You have to cross that threshold so that you're doing something different, and it's what you listen to, it's how you smell, it's what you wear, it's where you physically are. Do you remember Mr. Rogers when he comes home and he changes out, he switches his shoes, and then he takes off one cardigan and puts on another? And as a kid, that never made any sense to me. And as an adult, it's like, no, this makes perfect sense, because even though he still is wearing a tie, in his mind, I went from work mode to home mode, and it helped fully make that transition happen.
I got another thing, something I recently learned. It's like a little life hack. I haven't heard anybody else talk about it yet, but I feel like, one of the most important things that I've learned as far as productivity and getting your MITs done is, making less decisions, right?
Yeah.
So you have famous CEOs, celebrities, they wear the exact same outfit every day, like the Steve Jobs of the world, right?
Right.
And they have like 6 of the same pair of clothing. But something else I noticed too is that, decision making, a lot of the process of getting ready to start your day is actually decision making, right? So when you think of the normal advice, like put on a nice dress shirt, shower, have your coffee, go to the office, start work 9. But, while you're doing all that, you're putting on the belt, you're putting on the shirt, you're putting on the shoes. Is it clean? Is it not? You're showering, you're brushing your teeth, you're eating breakfast, you're going and getting your coffee, you're going to the office. That's already 20 different decisions, right?
You're diving into all those reserves as far as your willpower and your decision making. Yeah.
Another thing too, once you've put on all these clothes, you feel like professional, you're in work mode. So now if you don't work, it's almost like there's a lot of external pressure on you. Like, I'm in my professional mode, but I'm not doing my professional shit. So I found this weird little hack where I wake up in the morning and I just wear a blank t-shirt that I slept in and sweatpants. And then I literally go on my laptop and work for 3 hours straight. Well, I work from home too, so I'm in a different situation. But that way I get all my most important stuff done in the first 2 or 3 hours. Then I shower, put on my nice shirt, and then I start my official work day at 9 or 10 a.m. And not only do I feel and look good that I can actually get into the work now, I secretly have already done all the work. So it took all the pressure off.
Yes. No, I love that. And I think that this is where a lot of guys will get confused with style, is they think that what someone like me will say is, in order to be at your best, you have to get dressed first thing in the morning and you have to put on a suit and a tie because of what I'm more interested in helping men understand is that whatever you can do to make your clothing improve the other more important aspects of your life, do it. And so if you minimize your decision fatigue by not getting dressed until 3 hours after you've done your most important work, then don't get dressed until after you've done those 3 hours of your most important work. Do not make clothing something that gets in the way of this other stuff. But I guarantee you that if you go to meetings or you jump on Zoom and you're still wearing the same thing that you wore to sleep in, and it's the same thing that you wore to lift in, and it's the same thing that you wore to go pick up the mail in, then eventually it's all going to start to bleed together too. And so the key is to be intentional enough and self-aware enough to find out what works for you and what doesn't, and then adjust your style accordingly, both aesthetically and how much effort you put into it.
Yeah, I never even really realized it until we talked about it, but it's so true that we identify what we're doing so much with how we dress. And, we actually have more confidence, momentum when if I put on my gym clothes, I'm more likely to go to the gym. If I put on a dress shirt, I'm more likely to work. That's actually such a life hack. You know what I mean?
You can go buy one of these stupid, tacky, stretchy suits, and if you go wear that to the gym, physically you're going to be able to lift, but mentally, good luck.
Yo, that's such a good
luck.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So what are the most common mistakes guys make with their style?
The first one is that idea of I shouldn't care, or it's lame, or gay, or effeminate, or stupid, or whatever other reason that they can come up with not to care. The next one is once they do start to care, they overly rely on formality or pattern or color, because those are the things that are the most easily recognizable. And so they think that good style has to be incredibly unique or incredibly attention getting, because it has to be so obviously different than bad style. Whereas what you'll notice is the experts, They focus very little on that. And instead, what they will pay attention to is fit or texture or seasonality or cloth quality or construction quality or a lot of these other more subtle things.
Context too.
Context is huge. Yep.
Nice. Okay. What would you say are like the most common looks or archetypes? For example, you got like long hair guys that wear tie-dye shirts, hippies. You got big burly guys with beards and plaid. That's a lumberjack. Dress shirt and, Sperry's. That's a corporate bro. What are like, I know there's probably like 20 of them, but what are some of like the 5 to 10 you see the most?
So those are the way that I break this down in my book with my guys is that what you're talking about are kind of like subsets of archetypes. It's different tribes where it's pretty easy to recognize like the streetwear hype beast or the cowboy or again, you can take this to the gym where it's really easy to recognize the difference between like a power lifter and a CrossFitter and a bodybuilder. You've got these like subsets. Yeah. But if you want to zoom out a little bit further, you can dive into archetypes, which has more to do, the way that I break this down is you've got rugged, refined, and rakish.
Okay.
And it has more to do with internally who you are and how you interact with the world. And then you start to build your style out from that. So the rugged guys are the guys that they do best. They're at their best when they're interacting with the world physically. And so this may be like blue collar workers or athletes or guys who their hobbies are outdoorsy or all of that. Like you feel like you're at your best and most authentic self when you're doing something with your hands, you're doing something with your body, you're outside. Right. And there's certain style principles that are more closely correlated with that. The refined archetype are kind of like what you're saying, like the corporate guys are a subset of that, where it's you understand systems and hierarchies and rules, and you thrive by playing by those rules, by learning how to work within those and being able to like, I've got this connection and this guy owes me this favor and all of this kind of stuff. So there's certain style principles, and this you go back to ancient Greece, you go to feudal Japan, you go anywhere, at any point in history, and you have your rugged guys, you have your refined guys that are this, and then the third one, same thing, universal, are the rakish guys, and these are the guys who understand systems and hierarchies and rules just as well as the refined guys. But rather than thriving by playing by the rules, they thrive by being outsiders to those rules and bending them and breaking them and kind of breaking the system this way.
Wait, would that be the rakish, the third group?
Rakish. Yep,
rakish, sorry.
Yep. And so that's even like a pirate's a really good example of that, where they had their own kind of internal hierarchy and their own aesthetic rules. But a lot of it, like Blackbeard would literally tie fuses with black powder into his beard and light them on fire as they were boarding ships. So that it would instill fear and give this like demonic presence to him, because he understood human psychology and he had this rakish idea of here's how I'm going to master this and I'm going to twist it to my advantage as opposed to playing by the rules by it.
So I guess rakish nowadays would be like Slash of Guns N' Roses would be a great example.
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, if you're in LA, that's not necessarily super rakish anymore because so many guys now fit within that archetype. The thing about rakish that's so tricky is it's going to be entirely contextual. I mean, you go into one of these FANG companies or some software company and you wear a 3-piece suit and you're rakish because everybody else is anti-suit in that.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
It's like meta context to it that really needs to be understood and navigated.
Here's an interesting question. I know that you can read a lot into like how somebody presents themselves. Like basically you can tell a lot by how somebody dresses, but would you say, like, there's obviously, you can tell, wow, that person must be very confident by how they dress, or you could basically tell, wow, that person's not very intelligent based on how they dress. Would you think that there's some sort of correlation with how somebody dresses and potentially, like, a mental health issue? So, for example, if somebody's dressing super outgoing, exuberant, does that mean they have low self-esteem, or are they super confident? Or, maybe they have esteem issues, they're compensating, getting into like real fine, because you're somebody that's probably looked at more people stylistically than anybody else. So if anybody knows, it would be you. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I think that you have to look at two different factors to this. One is kind of the extreme of either how much attention they want or how much attention they want to avoid. And when you find guys that are on the extremes, like the outliers there, that's where you're more likely to find mental health. But then at the same time, then it also is going to correlate to status within a given component. So you talked about Conor McGregor and always wearing these like flashy 3-piece suits. His status in the fight world is high enough that he can wear those really flashy things without it being seen as lacking confidence, dealing with mental health issues, because he's got the chops to back it up. Right. Whereas if you're some dude that has never really been super confident. You're just starting this journey of trying to develop social skills. You're trying to develop some sort of self-development, and you immediately like overcorrect and you start dressing in a way that's really flashy. That's going to be much more indicative of a lack of self-esteem, depression, other things like that, because there is a dissonance between what you're expressing on the outside and what you actually are on the inside. Whereas for someone like McGregor, Michael Jordan, other kind of like iconoclast slash in their aesthetics and what they could do to back it up, there was actually congruence in being that attention getting and being somebody who earned the right to be that attention getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. Jump into another topic, I suppose, because the whole point of this podcast is like male self-improvement. What are some good fashion tips for like just a dude going on a first date? How to convey like, you know, I guess his own personality, but at the same time like professionalism, maturity, and experience.
So obviously this is going to be super contextual, and it's going to depend on like where you live in the world and what you're doing on that date and what you do for a living. But some kind of basic principles, or even some like basic kind of like tribally neutral things that you could wear is, I would say, wear something that the goal that you're after is, again, you don't want to look like you're somebody who's afraid of attention, that you just want to blend in, you want to disappear. You don't want to look like somebody who's desperate for attention and needs all of the external validation to feel comfortable and confident about who he is. Your goal is to present an aesthetic that communicates, I'm fine if you pay attention to me. I don't need to be ignored. I'm fine if you even look to me as somebody that could be like a leader in this situation, or somebody who would be memorable, or somebody who would be recognizable. And at the same time, I'm not desperate to be the center of attention. You want to find that balance in there. So for most guys, that's going to be neutral colors. That's going to be stuff that fits well. That's going to be stuff that's pretty much like right on par with what's appropriate for the environment. So if you're going to a nice place for like drinks and a conversation, then that may be dark jeans, a button up, and a sport coat. That's going to be too much if you're going to a pub or you're going to a baseball game or something else. And so that may be a lighter wash pair of jeans, some classic sneakers, and then a decent Henley or a well-fitting solid t-shirt or something that way. So, but again, bunch of different ways to do it, but that's the goal that you should be thinking about, is how do I look like somebody who's confident and comfortable enough to handle the pressure that comes with attention without looking like I'm desperate for attention.
Here's an interesting question for you. So I do a lot of coaching, mostly on like social skills, dating stuff, but one of my clients, he had some questions about style and fashion. And I created like a little bit of a hack for him. You're probably familiar with like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. So the idea of The Bachelor and Bachelorette is like all the contestants. So The Bachelorette, for example, you got like 30 guys competing for one woman. In order for the show to succeed, the audience has to have some sort of connection with the contestants so that they're rooting for them, want to see them win, right? And it is the job of the costume designers, outfit coordinators, whatever you want to call them, to basically make them look as good as possible in their own style. So for example, if you're a darker complexion guy, what colors complement you best? If you have blue eyes, you wear a blue shirt, stuff like that. And based on that, those are the outfits that they give all the contestants of the show. And so what I told him was to go through and whatever color profile he had to kind of match that. I don't know how familiar you are with The Bachelorette, but have you seen the outfits of these guys, and what do you think of them? Do you think that kind of communicates... Are they just doing what looks good physically, or do you think they're communicating accurately, you know, their actual personalities? Because, for example, they have like computer programmers that are wearing like, you know, lumberjack like outfits. And then, so what are your thoughts on how they're doing?
So I've never seen an episode of The Bachelorette. I'm really grateful that I'm married to a woman that has no interest in that stuff. In a fight or anything like that. From what I have seen on other reality TV shows, though, what they end up doing is they end up scripting guys that are, you're going to be the villain, or you're going to be like the nice guy, or you're going to be this. And more often than not, they create clothing that, yes, is aesthetically pleasing. It aligns with your color and your contrast and your physique and all of that. But then it also, from that communication standpoint, will send the signals of, this is the bad guy, this is the douchebag, this is the sweet guy, this is the doormat, this is the best friend. And these guys end up kind of falling into these roles. And then sadly, when it doesn't align is when you actually recognize their style, and you see these programmers that are just like lumberjacks, and they stand out because of the dissonance instead of because of the congruence.
Interesting. Another question for you. This one's more so on like the coaching and consulting end, but like, how did you get started as a fashion men's lifestyle like like because it is a weird, like you said, it's one of the weirdest jobs in the world, man.
Yeah. So I started Masculine Style as a blog really because I've always wanted to be a communicator. I got my degree in broadcast journalism. To be honest, I wanted to do political talk radio. Like I wanted to be the younger, more libertarian version of somebody like Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck.
Gotcha.
I'm no longer young, nor am I a libertarian anymore. But I worked for like a local news talk radio station. I got really sick of writing about politics and I wanted to keep my voice sharper. So I thought clothing is something that I'm interested in. It's something that I'm relatively good at. Why not start writing about that? And it started to build some momentum, but it wasn't until my oldest was born. So that's 10 years ago this year. My wife and I both knew that we wanted her to be able to stay home full time. I couldn't find a better job than the $13 an hour I was making at a credit union doing loans. Nobody would hire me. And now I'm very grateful for that being the case. And I'd gotten enough emails from enough guys. I thought, well, maybe I can turn this blog into something. And so I remember that first month offering these really cheap $25 style consultations where I'd say like, here are the colors you should wear. And, you should do jeans and a Henley, or you should do a suit. And like, it's laughable what it was. But I made enough money that first month that we didn't have to send her back to work and we didn't have to borrow too much from the credit card to make the bills work. And that eventually led to finding and working for a custom suit company. I worked for them for about 4 years and got a lot of really good insights into the mechanics of style, how things should fit, how drape works, how it makes your body look its best, sewing techniques and all this other stuff. And then it was 5 years ago that I made the jump and I've done coaching full time. And it's been awesome ever since. Cause you talk about, you live remotely and I get to work the hours that I want. I get to be home with my kids. My wife still gets to stay home and be a full-time mom. We homeschool. I don't work on Fridays or Saturdays or Sundays. So I get long weekends with my kids every weekend. And we've just been really blessed that it's provided this lifestyle for us.
Yeah, that's interesting, that perspective too, of how like your back was kind of against the wall. It kind of forced you into figuring this out. Like, for those that want to eventually, maybe not necessarily style or fashion, but get into like coaching and consulting, like, at what point did you make the leap? Like how many clients did you need? How much income did you need before you're like, I'll take a chance here? And what were some of the mistakes you made early on, how you overcame them?
Dude, so here's what's stupid is the year before I made the jump to working full time, I had 3 kids at the time and my wife was not working at all. I had made $16,000 off of Masculine Style the prior year. Like it was the stupidest thing to make the jump. And to be honest, like a full part of the story is I'm religious. And I felt very much like God had led me to, it's time to make the jump, stop wasting around. It's time to make the jump. And I remember coming home that day and telling my wife, I felt this way. And she said, good, I'm really excited. Wish you would have done it 6 months ago. So I can't tell you how much of a rocket boost it was to have a supportive spouse in my camp on that. And I remember the first 4 or 5 months really floundering because I had spent a little bit of time trying to build up a YouTube channel. I had maybe 25,000 subscribers on YouTube and I was trying to do what most of my YouTuber friends were doing. It's all the big guys that you guys find when you look at style. And what they do is they do sponsored content with clothing companies. And it didn't work for me. It didn't work with the way that I talked about style. My audience wasn't big enough for it to work. My audience that I did have didn't resonate with the idea. Selling ebooks didn't work. And it wasn't until I really kind of stumbled on the idea of, I really like teaching. I'm a good teacher and I really like teaching. So what if I start doing this as coaching instead? And then it was another 6 months of doing that where I kind of scraped by with a few clients until I realized that the audience that I had built on YouTube, which was guys who were looking for style advice, are not the kind of guys who are going to hire a coach. And so I made the jump over to Twitter, where I was in this kind of like masculine self-development space.
Interesting.
I found that if I found guys that were interested in fitness or improving their finances or improving their relationships, but they'd already developed this momentum of becoming better versions of themselves, if I could help them see that style was an important piece of that puzzle, those are the guys who became and still are my best clients. Like that's my niche now.
So did you ever run like ads, or was it all like word of mouth?
Oh yeah, I've wasted thousands of dollars in ads on Facebook and it's never borne any fruit. Like because my funnel is so long. My whole funnel is like, I have to spend 80% of my content, and I'd rather talk about this stuff anyway, talking about masculinity or fatherhood or politics or culture or religion or these other things that matter so much more than your clothing. And I have to build up this credibility as being somebody that can be seen as worth paying attention to there. And then it's like, oh, and this guy says style matters too. Well, okay, I trust him on this other stuff, so maybe I should trust him on style. And then they start to warm up to the idea. And then maybe they'll buy my book, or maybe they'll kind of like dip their toes in the water. And then finally, then they'll look at it and go, okay, I've tried this on my own. I'm not making enough progress. I'm going to hire this guy for a coach. And so for me to try to like distill that entire process down into a Facebook ad or a series of retargeting ads, like it's not happening. So it's been a really interesting journey along the way.
There's an interesting thing you dropped there, and that's something I find with a lot of my content, because you cut a little clip of it, put it on the internet, everybody freaks out because it's so polarizing, right? But the idea of advertising and marketing is people don't want what they need, they want what they want. So my whole idea is I'll give them things that they want, right? So they want hot takes, they want, how do I get with this girl, how do I she did this to me, what does that mean, right? Like people are obsessed with sex and attracting others, and the idea is, though, they come in because the flashy hot takes, but then once they actually absorb the podcast or the course or the coaching call, they realize it's not about that at all. It is all about yourself, right? So you almost have to like dumb down your message, because you have to play to people's wants, and then once they think, hey, I want that, they come to you, and then you give them what they actually need.
Absolutely. And the trick to that, the thing that's really difficult about it, is doing it in a way, this is where Twitter is, because Twitter, it doesn't have room for nuance. You've got 280 characters, which means you have to make a definitive statement and plant your flag, and it's really polarizing. But you also have to do it in a way that you actually believe what you're saying, and maybe you can flesh it out with more context to kind of like soften it. But at the core, the root principle is you have to mean what you say in your tweets. And that's what I've really loved, is it's exactly that, where people come for these polarizing kind of hot takes, or I can't believe the dude is willing to say stuff like this, or that's an unpopular opinion. And then they start to dive in a little bit deeper and go, okay, here's the actual meat of what this is. And that's where the style finally starts to rear its head.
Gotcha. Here's a question for, the big brain question, I suppose. But a lot of people watching this would probably resonate with this. Like, generally speaking, what income level people do you find request the most consulting from you? And, as an example, like most of my clients, they're usually guys that are like late 20s to mid 30s that have very high income. They have like a successful corporate job or a business, but they have extreme social anxiety. They're almost too intelligent for their own good in many ways. And, you probably are giving advice to I'd probably argue like high level people, because if you don't have that much money, you're not really able to book coaching and consulting calls. But at the same time, usually there's like a correlation between, having high status and high intelligence when it comes to clothing. So like, what is your like main, target? Well, your target audience is vast, I suppose, but what are you noticing most of your clients have in common when they come to you, like income wise, status wise, age wise?
Yeah. Okay. So most of my guys that are working with me one-on-one are somewhere between 250 and 500 a year in income. And most of them are guys that are in somewhere between their 30s and 50s. And they've had something. Okay. There's two things. There's either one, like a major change that's happened in their life. Like I'm getting married, I'm getting divorced, I've started a career in a new industry, I'm moving to somewhere where they kind of go, crap, I've got to totally revamp my self-perception. I've lost a lot of weight. I've gained a lot of weight. Like I have to buy new clothes. Or I've always been surprised. And these guys are some of my favorite. I would say a good 40% of my clients are guys that own blue collar businesses. They own landscaping companies or roofing companies, or things where they have to thread this really small needle of, I need clothing that I can wear on the job site that can handle the dirty jobs and doesn't alienate me from the guys who work from me, where it's like, oh, the boss is all prissy and pristine and he can't get his hands dirty. And at the same time, when I'm dealing with contractors and investigators and investors and governments and and all of these other things, that I don't look like I'm just another laborer, but I actually look like I'm a successful business owner as well. So a lot of guys who
I didn't
have to
think
kind
about
of
that.
fit both of those worlds. Those are some of my favorite clients to work with.
Wow. So it's mostly like high income, high level guys that are doing like high level, problem solving and perfection almost, right? Like they're tweaking and perfecting everything.
Almost like addicted to self-development, where they find that, okay, I've got like this styled and this styled and this styled, and then holy crap, my style is so glaringly low in comparison to all these other things that I've improved about myself. Here's another thing that I found really interesting, is because one of the things that I ask in my onboarding application is what their income range is.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of the time, if somebody ghosts me on a sales call, their income is under 100,000 a year.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's never the guys who are doing above six figures that ghost me. Some of them have to cancel last minute, but they will send me an email or they will use my scheduling tool to cancel. But the guys who just flat out ghost me, almost always the guys who have less than six figures in income.
Man, good thing I sent you an email on time.
Man, judge me. Dude.
I'm in Peru and I haven't been using my phone all day. So yeah, so like I went out to the coffee shop and I was like, okay, I have to be back by 15 minutes before, send him the link. But like, it's weird because I like to be very, what if he pings me that he cancels? I just took I knew, I had a feeling you'd show up, but like, it's tricky to do that and then live the lifestyle of like not having your phone around you. So, but another thing you said too, it's so true. Like, with my courses and stuff, I noticed that the people that will actually complete the course are more likely to be the ones that invest, right? Because when you invest money, you're actually more likely to complete what it is you pay for, to commit to it, because it's like, I'm spending the money. But if it's free, there's no commitment, right?
Nobody values free.
Yeah. Russell Brunson. Yeah. I was going to say Expert Secrets. Have you read that book? Oh, buddy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Master
One of
shit.
those things that I have quite a few friends that are, and this is one of the things that I had to really get over the hurdle of, is I think that you have a moral obligation to charge as much as you can for what your services are, because, and obviously you need to deliver value on it. Like, it needs to be as much as you can while being commensurate with the value of what you're delivering. But every time I raise my prices, the clients that I work with get better results, and they're clients that I enjoy working with more, because the more you invest in something from a financial perspective, the more likely you are to put in the work and actually get the results that you're after. Yeah.
Dude, this is a lot more interesting than like I thought it would go, because we connect on a we're interested in the same shit. We'll talk like behind the scenes shit after, but two more questions for the actual podcast. One of them, how many of your clients, they know how to dress, they understand the fundamentals, like you've had enough calls with them that they get everything, but now they pay you to be like, yo, Tanner, is this a good fit today? Like every week they check in with you, like, what do you think of this? Should I wear it? Should I not? Do you have any guys like that?
I've got a couple of guys that stay on retainer, and it's more for being able to have me to check in on kind of bigger things, or that it's just fun. Like they like having my help when it comes to shopping and finding brands. One of the things that I pitch my guys on is that one of the differences between me and a stylist is, a stylist you have to hire every 6 months. Right. With me, once you're done, you're done. I just did an event with 8 of my clients that was live here in Utah. And my absolute favorite thing about it was, for the 3 days that they were here, not a single one of them was wearing something that I had to find the brand or recommend or give my stamp of approval of. And they all looked fantastic. And so they were entirely self-sufficient, which was for me, that's like, I did my job. Is that these guys, I make myself obsolete. They do not need me in.
I just thought of another question, actually. How do you avoid the temptation to be like, yeah, man, it looks good,
This is one of the things that I really appreciated about my time in custom suiting, is you have to develop this like bedside manner of being able to talk about things that guys are uncomfortable about, where it's like, you get a dude with a big beer belly that comes in, and how do you talk to him about the fact that if he wants a super skinny fit, it's going to pull weird and it's not going to be flattering because he's going to look like an orange on a toothpick.
Yeah.
And so you develop this skill set of being able to say things in a way that it communicates what you want to communicate without hurting their feelings. Or I've also found that a lot of times if I ask the right questions. Like, you tell me what you think about this fit, or what is it that feels off about this to you, or what is it that could be improved? And they will usually open the door, and then you can talk about it in a way that they're open to receiving, as opposed to like, dude, I can't believe you wore that out the door. That looks ridiculous.
Yeah, like sometimes you must be like, dude, no, looks like shit, dude.
Well, and that's what's nice is, again, it doesn't happen very often. It happens early on with some clients where it's like, yeah, I know this is the best that we can do. It happens with some of my guys that come into my group coaching that they don't really do the work and they're just looking for validation. But for the vast majority of my guys, it's very rare that I have to just say, that is a complete miss. You should not do that at all.
You know, over the years, you've probably had some really interesting clients, interesting stories. Like, what's the most crazy, unique, interesting, like, you know, situation one of your clients found themselves in where the solution was, or a potential solution was like their clothes? And I'll give you an example. Like, let's say, you know, one of your clients is a screenwriter, okay? And he has a meeting with a board of directors for a movie production company. You know, Seth Rogen's going to be there. And you're like, well, I did some deep research on Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen's favorite, you know, movie is Star Wars. So if you wear a Star Wars t-shirt right away, you know, like, do you have any examples of like crazy, specific, customized advice and it leading to like good results?
Okay, so I'll give you two of them. One is actually a mutual friend of ours. It's Greg O'Gallagher.
Nice.
Yeah. Greg's been a friend for almost 10 years. When we first started together, we did like some mutual trade where I did some style coaching and he did some fitness coaching for me. Mm-hmm. And Greg was very much in the space of dressing like most other fitness influencers at the time. Yeah. And it was helping him understand that it's like, no, dude, you're not selling fitness, you're selling the lifestyle. And the clothing needs to reflect that. And so do not be one-dimensional in your clothing, that you look like you're always either on your way to or on your way from the gym, or that everything has to be hyper tight so that we can all see the vascularity in your biceps, just like it is with every other fitness bro. Right. But to be able to help Greg, and what I've loved is that he's just totally taken this and run with it. He's just done so incredibly well with his style, but he creates this whole multi-dimensional aspect of, yeah, my physique is definitely like a main asset, but it's not my only asset. And so Greg does a really good job with his style with that. On the flip side, one that's much more subtle, but is the most meaningful, is one of my clients. I was just talking with him a few months ago, and he was talking to me about how when he started changing what he wore at home, it made it so that he felt more responsibility to deliver for his daughters when he was at home, instead of just being able to mentally check out and I'm just off the clock, just let me relax, don't let me. But it helped shift his mindset into being more active and more engaged as a father than he was otherwise. And he attributed that to changing the way that he dressed when he was at home. That one was super impactful for me.
Interesting. I was thinking there'd be some story about some guy doing like a bank robbery.
Some
shit like that.
It probably isn't. I just don't know about it.
Well, dude, cool, man. This was awesome, man. Like, this was really interesting. I feel like I have a lot of different styles. Like, I was going to wear a dress shirt today, but it was wrinkly. And then I was going to wear a poncho, but I'm thinking for the thumbnail, it'd be hard to cut.
Like the colors.
Right? How do you make that one work?
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, because in Peru, it makes sense. And, you know,
I love that you're there and you're incorporating some of the local style. That's I have a couple of clients that are, again, digital nomads. And one of the things we always talk about is, wherever it is that you are, how do you incorporate some local elements to your style without looking like you're just LARPing that, hey, I'm a local. Like, how do you put it in? And that's always a fun challenge.
Right. But yeah, dude, thanks so much for doing this. What can you tell us about your website and where we can find you and what you offer and all that stuff?
Okay, so if I'm way more active on social media than on the site, than with email or anything. So if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, it's all at Tanner Guzzi, TANNERGUZY. The main site, especially if you're interested in learning about coaching, whether that's group or one-on-one, is masculine-style.com. You can go check it out there. There's old articles and stuff like that. And then I have published a book on all of these principles called The Appearance of Power, and you can find it on Amazon, or if you are more of a listener than a reader, then you can check it out on Audible, and there's an audio version of it too. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanner Guzzi, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Okay, guys, so obviously the lights are out because we went so long that the sun went down. But, dude, what an amazing guest. Like, you know, a lot of you guys watching this video, you probably came in here thinking, okay, like, style advice, self-improvement, fashion, like, what is this guy talking about? But I was amazed at how deep this shit really is. Like, psychologically, like, you can really tell a lot about people just by how they dress and how they position themselves. And it's so much more deep than I thought. And one of the biggest takeaways, something we were talking about at the end there, was that like whenever you're dressed a certain way, you act that way. So for example, you know, you're more likely to go to the gym if you put on your gym equipment. You're more likely to act professional and be disciplined if you're wearing like a nice clean dress shirt and suit, like a corporate thing. And you're more likely to be slack, laid back if you're like, you know, in sweatpants and a hoodie, right? It's like super deep shit. But dude, Tanner Guzzi, super cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was probably one of my favorite podcasts I've done. Just fascinating stuff. So if you guys want more guests like that, if you have some suggestions for other guests like that, then love to have them on. And like I said before, guys, a lot of this content is you guys think you want something to do with dating or women, but then you click and then you get what you actually need, which is just cool information that you never would have gave a fuck about unless you clicked for the title. I guarantee you guys probably wouldn't have clicked if it was about like the history of fashion or something. But now that you're here, you're like, yo, this is sick. So thanks again for watching, guys. As always, hit the like button, share this with your friends. The best way a podcast or show can spread is when people share it with others. So please do me a solid, share it with friends. Get your friends to give a 5-star review on Apple as well. And if you need one-on-one personalized coaching and consulting, whether it comes to dating, social anxiety, approaching women in real life, getting a girlfriend, dealing with tests, communication, going on dates, getting over a breakup, building social status, the ability to approach and talk to women and talk about all kinds of stuff and be attractive and interesting. Anything you need help with, you can book a call in the description below. One-on-one coaching and consulting available. I have not many slots left for May, but I have 70% availability for June, so make sure you book a one-on-one coaching call. I look forward to helping you guys with whatever issues you have. And yeah, see you next week. Every Wednesday, new episode at 5 p.m. EST. Love you guys. Peace.